Hello again. I thought since Gaza is always in the news at the moment, that I would just run through the past history of that territory to remind people what's actually going on there, because you'll see it described as a vast concentration camp, uh, under siege. There's all sorts of expressions that you'll hear used time and again relating to Gaza. I thought I'd just remind people what actually happened and how that territory, the Gaza Strip, arose. In 1948, there was an agreement that where Mandate Palestine had been, would be two new states, a Palestinian Arab state and a Jewish state of Israel. The territory would be divided between them. The Israelis agreed. The Palestinians didn't, and neither did the neighbouring Arab countries. So they attacked and tried to destroy Israel, which didn't work. The area which we now call the Gaza Strip, or more generally referred to as Gaza, was part of the land that the Egyptians seized. They saw the disorder, the civil war, really, in between Israel and Palestine, as an opportunity to expand their own territory. So the Egyptian army invaded from the Sinai and seized a little bit of what was supposed to be the Palestinian state. That is to say, Gaza, Khan Yunis, and Rafah, the cities there along the Mediterranean. Between 1948 and 1967, there was no question of the Egyptians allowing the Palestinians to set up a state in the Gaza Strip. They didn't want the Palestinians. They kept them in refugee camps, and all that area for 20 years was under the military rule of the Egyptian army. The Egyptians have always been very cautious of Islamic fundamentalists. They've had terrible trouble with the Muslim Brotherhood, and they didn't want a load of Palestinians entering their country in case it destabilised Egypt. So until 1967, they kept them locked up in refugee camps in Gaza. In 67, there was a war between Israel, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. And the Israelis took the Gaza Strip and they ran it pretty much as the Egyptians had done. It was under military rule. A lot of people from Gaza went to work in Israel. Conditions weren't all that bad. I lived there in the late 70s. I lived by Rafah. I lived in an Israeli settlement called Talmei Yosef. It's gone now. It's in the northern Sinai. But people used to travel in and out of Gaza freely. A lot of people from Gaza and Rafah worked in Israel. But they didn't like the fact that it was under Israeli military rule, and quite understandably so. I don't blame them at all for that. No one likes living under military rule. There was an uprising, the Intifada. I'm sure some people have heard about that. Eventually, in 2005, Israel agreed that they would withdraw completely from Gaza, Rafah, Khan Yunis. They handed that territory over to the Palestinians, and the understanding was that in exchange for the Israeli withdrawal, Israel pulled everybody out. They dismantled all the settlements there, and they pulled out of Gaza completely. And the idea was that Gaza would become more or less an independent state. It could have thrived. It could have been like Monaco or Monte Carlo. It could have been a Mediterranean resort. Hotels were built. There were plans for an international airport. And there was no earthly reason why Gaza could not have functioned as an independent country, except that it was taken over by Hamas. And they rather used it as a launch pad for attacks on Israel. And so from 2005 onward, rockets were fired at Israel from Gaza. There were guerrilla raids. There were all sorts of things going on. They were importing massive amount of arms, which caused the Israelis to put a naval cordon round it and search all ships entering Gaza. And ultimately, this led to the attacks on Israel in October. The demands now being made that Israel should withdraw from Gaza, that was simply the situation that had been the case from 2005 onwards. There were no Israelis at all in Gaza from 2005 until last year. There was nothing at all to stop Gaza functioning as an independent country. And that, essentially, is the history of Gaza.